When I think about AI and using it in here, the winners right now in this sort of AI revolution are the companies that are sitting on a unique pile of data, right? So Box, you thought, okay, they're an interesting, file hosting company, but now they're like an AI thought leader, Aaron Levy out there on Twitter. It's like they're sitting on all this great data, Salesforce, Reddit, different places where there's data that you can use. And we look at this and we go, if we just threw AI at the problems inside our company at any kind of issue or any kind of incident, it's not very helpful. But you have to have really, really good data to do this.
Welcome back to the Information Week Podcast. I'm your host, Senior Editor Zhao Pierre Ruth. Today, we're talking about recovery mode, leadership during a security breach or when there's a near miss. Even with preparation, C-suite tech leaders may have to adapt in the moment to meet security threats. Bad actors by nature do not play by the rules. And in the AI era, the rules have certainly changed on both sides. And who knows what may or may not happen once quantum computing becomes a readily available resource, if it ever does. So how do CTOs and CIOs handle threats or near misses? Do the post-action reports lead to real calls to action that they can follow up on? For today's episode, we are joined by Zach Lewis, CIO at the University of Health Sciences and Pharmacy in St. Louis. Zach, so good to be seeing you.
Thank you for having me, JP. Appreciate it.
And we're also joined by Brian Alvey, Chief Technology Officer for WordPress VIP. Brian, good to be seeing you.
I'm excited about the show.
All right, great. All right. So let's talk about recovery mode and security breaches, near misses. What are some early signs that you see that can indicate that there might be something going on, that there might be a bad actor nibbling around, or might be some kind of underlying issue that needs to be addressed? Brian, when do you lead us off with some of the kind of like the early things that just kind of get the spidey senses tingling?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an interesting topic. Both the near misses and the full, not misses, the full hits. So we are WordPress VIP. We're the enterprise division of a very big consumer company, the WordPress company Automatic, that powers like 43% of the web with WordPress, right? So we're mostly dealing with websites. So for us, an issue would be a site gets defaced, a site gets hacked, a site gets taken offline. So there's a visible, very easy way to tell, did the New York Post or Rolling Stone or the White House or one of the things that we host, did something go wrong, right? Or do all the titles now have, F-bombs in them? Did something happen? And so we worry a lot about sort of detecting those things early and catching them before they actually deface the site or they take something down. But for us, it's interesting because it's very easy to tell when something happens. It's not like some data breach happened and you find out 9 months later. So we have a bunch of team processes, things like that to deal with it, and we'll get into it as we ask more questions.
Gotcha. Zach, how about on your end? What are some of the things that start rippling the sand that say, hey, there might be some security issues to kind of start to address, take action on?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it used to be more technology focused, seeing on-site services like maybe not quite performing as well as it could, or being unavailable. Long delays in being able to access stuff. Anymore, though, we've actually shifted to more of a sort of this cloud SaaS platform at least our university, and we're very dependent on our third parties. So very much in tune with what are they doing? Can we get to their sites online? Is our logins working? It's little things like that, because when we're being hosted by several other providers all over the world in different areas, on different platforms and different services, there's a lot of other moving pieces now, not just that on-prem piece that we used to look for, that have to be working functionally to indicate whether or not something has been attacked or not.
Gotcha. And let's talk about near misses compared with an actual full-on breach. Is a near miss something that you're potentially detecting, weeks or so later because there was no, aggressive, upfront, indication that something happened, or what do those kinds of things tend to look like?
Yeah, so I'll grab it. Go ahead.
Yeah, go for it, Brian. Do it.
You should call one of us out by name. I was watching your old shows, and I'm like, if you say start with Zach, that'd help a lot. For us, it's again sort of those signals. You can detect things that haven't really happened, but the best ones to detect are the ones where something really, really went wrong. You get a full confirmation that something went bad. But we look a lot. We built a whole platform called Insights and Metrics inside our hosting dashboard that lets us basically log anything. The idea was, every time there's an incident, look back and say, what could we have been watching that would have helped us catch this thing, and just always learn from it, whatever the incident is, whether it's a near miss or a full-on breaking, as we call them. And we have this software in Slack called Breaking Bot. It's an app that we got from the Tumblr acquisition of all places. Tumblr is a very consumer blogging platform. It's free. It's not an enterprise thing. It's not something, but man, we use the heck out of that for our enterprise customers because it pulls in all the right teams, whether you need 3 people for an incident or 30 people for an incident. It lets us run this process sort of end to end on it. And we don't really separate the difference between a near miss and an actual incident, an actual something that we need to report. The difference would be if it was a security thing, there's more people we need to tell. There's something else that we need to do in the document we write at the end that explains what happened in the incident. But otherwise, it's all the same learnings, all the same people, all the same tools, all the same sort of crisis mode operations go into effect. Sometimes, though, it's just 3 people doing it. And sometimes it's 30.
Brian said several things I 100% agree with. I think for us, like differentiating what a near miss and a hit is, a near miss, maybe a threat actor compromising a credential and logging in, but not being able to exfiltrate data or get to any systems because another control, stop them. For us, that's good. We don't want exfiltration. We don't want harm or disruption or something like that. So again, Brian said learning from everything that happens, always going back and having those lessons learned, like how did they get in? Let's secure that. Did they take down a site? Did they take down a service? Well, how did they get in? Let's go through that process and then really sort of bolster those controls where you need it around that critical stuff, and keep learning from every. I have nothing else to add on that. I think going back and learning on any incident or near miss that happens is the best way to keep building the program and keeping things strong.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So let's jump to talking about communication. If there is an incident, how do you decide on internal and external communication after there's an incident? Do you tell everyone absolutely everything that happened or almost happened? Zach, why don't you lead us off with how do you kind of like weigh what to share, who to share it with, and where it makes it make the most sense?
Oh yeah. So for us, it's a matter of looking at a few different things. Are there regulations or laws around when you have to do reporting, and what are the reasons that you have to report? I think knowing those are incredibly important, and you and your team need to understand what that is. If you do decide to make notice, and depending on when your reporting requirements are, like we've always wanted to gather as much information as possible. So I write about this in Locked Up, but when we had an incident, a ransomware attack, it was a matter of, well, let's gather information before we tell everyone. And you can debate that all you want, but I'd rather come forward with all the information I have and a really good picture of everything than if I'm allowed to, as opposed to going forward and being like, hey, we had an incident, it affected X amount, or we think it affected X amount. And then you do the forensics and you find out that it's not 1,000 accounts, it's 10,000 accounts. And then a couple of weeks later, well, it's not 10,000 accounts, it's 1 million accounts, and having to come back and keep changing that narrative and having it grow and get bigger and bigger and retell everyone that you've had an incident and keeping it, front of mind. Gather that info, come forward. And also on the back end, I think it helps with the sort of the stress of the end users too, your customers. Like if they know early on there's a breach or an attack, every problem they have is typically going to be aligned with that, and they're going to think it's because of that. If you can come out with real definitive information on who it actually affected and what the ramifications are, you can give that, you can sort of box it in and kind of control that narrative and that panic a little bit more. So that's kind of how I go about it.
So one, I'll echo everything Zach said as well. So this is a pretty good pairing, this show. In terms of, the regulations and things like that. But back to the sort of the software that we use to manage this is all pre-AI, but it works a lot like your favorite AI assistant. It's just an internal tool we have, Breaking Bot. And so you get invited to the Slack channel, and there are commands you run in there. Who is taking over, who's the point on this, who's basically running it. And if something goes more than 8 or 12 hours or whatever a shift is, I have to hand off point, to JP, and then JP hands it off to Zach, as you people go to sleep and keep working on these things over time, because we have some incidents that, we'll solve the outage in, 5 minutes, but we'll work on the root cause and the analysis and making sure that we're in tune with the customer and make sure this doesn't happen again for 23 days, so we'll have some of these things resolved after that. But there are tools for like specifically one of my favorite ones is who's taking comms, who is talking to the customer, who's writing up these root cause analysis documents at the end. And then again, depending on if it was a security breach, that's a completely different level of documentation and explanation that we need to do. And the most interesting thing, I think, in all of this is the weird tension between telling them everything you can as soon as possible and giving them the right information later on. And that, like Zach is like saying, yes, like, did you balance? You have to go through this thing. And it's kind of a bunch of heartache because we have, in addition to the sort of the laws and regulations, we have contractual requirements. Some customers have to have a ticket responded to in 15 minutes, some in 3 hours, or some in, 10 hours. I don't know what the numbers are, but like there's, it's like small, medium, large for that. And then same thing about getting that root cause analysis document to them at the end. If you tell them minute by minute what's going on as you have theories, you're giving them 20 different theories across an hour. And you're like, we think it's this. Oh, crud, it's not that. We think it's this. And you're just confusing them because the people that you're talking to on the other end of that line, on that bridge call, they're freaking out and their bosses are screaming, and you need to tell them something. If they tell them 15 stories, we all look like fools. So we want to get it right. So we take a lot of time. And I will say we don't share everything for that reason. And so our frontline support people hate that because they've got the customer screaming like they need help, getting information to them. But we want to make sure that we give them the right thing and that we retain sort of their confidence going forward, that we get what happened, that we did a great job in this crisis moment, and that we're there for them next time.
We'll follow up on that. Is there any pushback that in general is out there, just people saying that organizations need to share more? I mean, you're talking about, trying to take a kind of level-headed approach to this, but are there certain, elements out there saying like, no, you should, share absolutely everything, potentially not take into account all these things that you're saying?
I think you can share too much. I just think you can tell them too much. They don't need to be in the weeds. They don't need to know why some version of it. They need to know what happened, that you're going to fix it next time, but they really don't need to know everything. Our customers hate that. I can think of very specific customers who are going to watch this and tell me like that makes them miserable. Like we do argue about this, but you can't disclose everything, especially not minute by minute, and they just, at some point they just have to say, we get it. You're handling this. We trust you. And you've given us enough information for the powers that be, the board, the people who are upset. And often, I mean, we're talking like the incidents are always our fault. There's customer created, you can host whatever code and stuff you want. You can break your own site. You can DDoS yourself, right? It can be third party things, CDNs, things like that. So there's plenty of ways that things can go wrong. But no, I think they need to know that you fixed this problem, that you know what's going on and that you've got it handled in the future. I don't think they need to know very specifically in the weeds exactly what happened.
I'll add, if you're also giving them a minute by minute play, everyone has an opinion on how you're doing it and what you should be doing. And you get a lot of additional feedback and noise that you don't necessarily need during that disclosure while you're working through stuff on how you're handling your incident and recovering from it. So.
All right, so let's go further, like auditing the actual incidents, getting to know what's going on, automation, other forms of AI, is that helping to get to the bottom of things? Brian, should lead us off with your perspective.
Yeah. So in that Breaking Bot app, which is, I'd say, is always on when we're doing these things, again, we will launch a Breaking Bot proactively when there hasn't been an incident. So we work with a lot of news publications in the UK. And when the Queen was dying and everybody kind of knew like there's going to be a week of heavy traffic, big spikes, a lot of, 24/7 coverage, we just proactively launched a Breaking Bot. I think we're up to 2,000 of them right now. So Breaking Bot, 1,292 or whatever for this thing. And in there, it's really all about you're documenting everything. So every time somebody says something, every time somebody says create an action item, there's a command in there: take point, take comms, create an action item for the future, follow up on this thing. So we're constantly adding things to that you can then pull out and use as documentation. Where really what we're doing is we are live blogging, we are building that root cause analysis document in real time together collaboratively as we solve the problem. So I think you're doing the documentation as you do the actions, such that you can go back, rewrite it, sanitize it a bit, prepare it, make it something that's not necessarily like safe for readability, but like this just not too full of technical jargon, that can be explained to somebody's boss or a CEO or a board member as to what happened, right? But we're writing that as we go. So I think that's what you have to do. If you have to look back a day later and figure out what happened in the ER when the ambulance came in, you're doomed. If you document it in the moment, then you're a winner.
Zach, from your point of view.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm in Vegas at one of the largest cybersecurity conventions in the world, and I can tell you that thousands of vendors here, probably half of them are AI enabled security operations centers, trying to streamline that your security recovery, your detection, your response, using generative AI to look at events, look at alerts coming in, triage those, escalate up as needed, and even remediate some of those. It's a huge market right now. We'll see that probably scale down in the next few years as some collapse and some combine. But I'm in chats right now with peers talking about integrating AI security operations centers or SOCs into our environments to help with burnout, help with fatigue, help with some of those entry level positions that are hard to fill. And it's changing the industry very quickly, and it's probably going to be the way of the future forward. But I like what Brian was saying. Taking an incident response plan or an action plan or something around an incident, and having AI kind of help build that out and structure it. And we do something similar. We fed it ours. We tweak what needs to be tweaked. We add stuff that needs to be added as we add new systems, and we talk about what's the best way to add something in there. Who are we going to route this up to? Who's responsible for this? And really just keeping that document living and changing and being edited over time. 100%. That's the way to go.
Can I add something about AI here? Because I wish I was at this conference with you. Vegas is a crazy town. When I think about AI and using it in here, the winners right now in this sort of AI revolution are the companies that are sitting on a unique pile of data, right? So Box, you thought, okay, they're an interesting, file hosting company, but now they're like an AI thought leader, Aaron Levy out there on Twitter. It's like they're sitting on all this great data, Salesforce, Reddit, different places where there's data that you can use. And we look at this and we go, if we just threw AI at the problems inside our company at any kind of issue or any kind of incident, it's not very helpful. But you have to have really, really good data to do this. So when I talked about this insights and metrics thing we built, it's just ClickHouse. It's just throwing in any metric, anything you want over time, right? Then you can relate, server performance over time to when deploys happened. And you can correlate, okay, this deploy made the performance worse. This deploy made the performance better. And so if you have this sort of time series data or this data you capture over time of any kind, you can do a lot with that. And so we look at things like, very weird things like editorial actions. How many times did, JP sign in and, write a story on the New York Post or something like that? And if you we have the ability now with AI to kind of look at this data and find patterns. And so now you have good data and AI, you have the ability to spot things before they happen. So if we see that JP writes one story a week and only ever edits his own story, and he writes an opinion column for our newspaper, whatever it is, but all of a sudden he signed in and he's like changing other people's headlines and defacing, like putting in, dirty words and stuff like that. You can see that's not normal behavior based on this pattern in your insights and metrics. You can go back and see editorial actions and you can say that looks like an aberration. That's an anomaly, not your normal kind of server performance anomaly, New Relic kind of thing, but it's a bad actor kind of anomaly. And we can say let's make him authenticate with his two-factor device again. Or give them a challenge, a step-up authentication, we call it. And if that's just looking backwards, what you're able to do with AI now, and I think they just did this in a version of WordPress a few weeks ago, is you can trick AI into finding things that don't exist, and they'll find the things that do exist. And what I mean by that is, say you tell AI there was a flaw, there's a problem, there's a thing that happened. Now it actually didn't. You're just sending it on this wild goose chase. And you say, find the way that Zach was able to hack in and change this thing and see unpublished data before it was published. And you just let AI simmer and look, and it will come back and it will actually find you a security flaw that you didn't know existed. Nobody knew existed. So you're able to proactively fool it into finding holes in the bucket that you didn't know existed and nobody's ever found them. So there's no 0-day exploit. You found it first. So I think AI helps you sort of historically going backwards, looking at patterns and helping you in the day-to-day. But also it can just do things you were never able to do before in terms of setting it on some project to find problems, like the Mythos level promise, right? Of training the stuff on your software and making it do great security things. So I think we live in interesting times and I've never been more excited.
Okay. All right. So let's turn the page to look at what happens, after the dust settles, after a potential incident. Who structures a plan? Who takes point? deciding or making the choices on if there are any changes that need to be made about the way the organization has responded to a breach or a potential breach. Yeah, and along with that, if there is an assessment that says that there might be a needs for certain security upgrades, different new procedures, how much does cost playing a factor in terms of then potentially introducing something more robust? Zach, why don't you lead us off with your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have a window of time, right, to act after an incident, especially a significant incident. Maybe you have a ransomware attack, maybe you have data exfiltration or something along those lines. But you have, a few months after the event, we'll say up to 6 months, where you're in front of the board, you're talking about what's going on, you talk about what's happened, you've identified how the threat actors got in, and it's time to fix it now. In a great world, those are easy fixes. Maybe it's missing MFA, multi-factor auth on some systems. Maybe it's you need more resilience on the hardware, better backup, something like that. Something you can do with the tech you have. But if you don't, like, this is the time you have to make an ask, and you need to come with something very specific, not very broad. Like, we need X product or X people because this failed. And if you can show them sort of the concrete reason of why something failed and how this is going to fix it, you're much more likely to get it. It seems to me that even now, though, asking for staff augmentation from that is still harder after an incident than getting a new tool. It seems like tools and software are easier for boards and companies to swallow, so you're more likely to grab something like that. So obviously, it's probably going to be AI enabled at this point, but being very specific in your ask, and when you do make that ask and you do make that implementation, make sure you don't have an incident again from that same point of failure, because that would look really, really bad if you ask for money and tools and you get hit from the same spot. So make sure you fix that vulnerability, you put that tool in place, but be mindful of your teams. You don't want tool sprawl. You don't want tons of systems that the team can't manage and can't handle. So only really get a system or a new tool if it's something that the team can manage, can understand, can implement properly and quickly, accurately, to help with security events in the future. But other than that, really just looking at what you have, and if there's something there that can be used to patch up those failures in the past. Again, think of that MFA, those more resilient backups, those account controls, and really focusing on your identity pillar and your data pillar.
Gotcha. Great. All right, Brian, your perspective.
Yeah. So, along the lines of making sure that we fix things in the future, there's a book I read a long time ago called The Checklist Manifesto. And so, like, doing everything by checklist, right? Like, if it's a plane crashing, there's no time to think or invent a solution. You go down the checklist, right? This is what you do in the moment. And the last item on the checklist is always, was this checklist good? Do you need to change anything on the checklist? Like, the last thing you do is make sure it's a good checklist for the next person who has to run this playbook, right? So I'm a big believer in that. So I don't think things will slip through the cracks. And then also, when you think of WordPress, you think of like consumer software, it doesn't scale, it's easy to hack, whatever, right? We do enterprise WordPress. It's the opposite. So we are actually FedRAMP moderate authorized to sell into the government. So we host the White House's website. We host NASA's website. We host Federal Reserve banks. So you're not allowed to do that unless you go through all this ridiculous security gauntlet, jump through hoops, and there are things that this made our division grow up. This made our company grow up. So maybe we had some servers a long time ago where you could just try passwords for days. And then it's like, no, sorry, after 3, you're locked out. So we had to put in all these sort of security and risk type things and do video training with Mitnick and all that on everybody so they don't get socially engineered into, getting, JP's account gets hacked and now we can get it and change the White House or whatever, right? So OS updates on our phones and our laptops and all these things. Chrome is always up to date. And it will actually, during a call like this where I'm on Chrome in a browser talking to you, it'll be like, sorry, you have 10 seconds left and Chrome is updating. You have no choice because we have to stay up to date. And so the rest of our company is, like I said, Tumblr, WordPress.com, Jetpack, journaling apps, Day One, things like that are all very consumer level. We have to do this really important business stuff. And so we're not allowed to kind of leave things open like that. So there's just nothing, it's not even like a cost analysis. If there was a problem, we have to solve it. There is no not solving that problem for us to maintain that FedRAMP medium level authorization, which is a really hard thing to get. Background checks on our employees. They have to live in the continental US. That's not how the rest of our company operates. You start out in Pennsylvania, you move to New Zealand, you still work here. You're just on a different time zone. Not in the enterprise division with WordPress VIP. So we can't say no, I guess is the short answer.
I think that's interesting in highlighting the difference in your company and sort of how you sell and your customer level. And then like mind higher ed focusing on students. Like, neither of them are wrong. They're both very different. It depends on your organization. Like, there's very different methods to go about doing that. Like, you have to have, this to maintain those regulations and to serve your customers and your base and continue growing. And like, we are more budget constraint and cautious of that. So it's like, all right, do we have to do it? Can we get by with this? And having to make a real pitch, just, industry and different and money. It's always funny seeing how other people have to operate in different fields.
Gotcha. All right. Well, speaking of solving problems and how we're going to operate dealing with these kind of things, now it is time for Questionable Ideas, our tabletop exercise where our panelists will serve as interim executives at the fictional company called Questionable Ideas. These scenarios were not shared in advance with our panelists, and they are not responsible for the presence of goblins, kobolds, or gremlins. That, as always, is entirely my fault. So again, the ground rules for this: Brian and Zach will be serving as interim executives who have the same rights, powers, and privileges that they expect to have with this fictional company, and you will just have to be dealing with the shenanigans out there. So, all right, gentlemen, are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, all right. First scenario. Who watches the warnings? The CEO of Questionable Ideas gave the goblins permission to launch a predictive AI-powered security mesh architecture to simplify control and threat detection. 2 days later, the security team is overwhelmed by false positive threats. The goblins say the AI looks 3 steps ahead for potential risk. At first, it flagged documents exchanged between secure company-controlled messaging and personal and private accounts. Now, it's creating agents to monitor behavior unrelated to the company, including flagging items on employees' shopping apps. The goblins say it's the only way to be safe, and that you should also not forget to buy laundry detergent on your way home tonight. Do you keep this architecture as is, modify it, or scrap it all and start over? Brian, why don't you lead us off with your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, I would just answer this in a very sort of common sense way, which is it's all about interrupts. So there's only so much attention that a person has to deal with this kind of junk. And if you don't get enough alerts about an anomaly happening, or if you get too many alerts about an anomaly happening, both of those just don't get your attention. They don't rise to the surface that it needs to be at to be taken seriously and become important. So it's actually a flaw in the product that it's doing itself a disservice by being so noisy that it gets ignored. The whole point is it should be taken seriously, and that it should be a critical interrupt, right? It'd be in that sort of Goldilocks zone, right? Not too many, not too many, not too little. So your alerting is bad. We built this with our insights and metrics when we had anomaly detection for like site performance. And I get those emails. And the first couple of times I'm like, oh, this is a big deal. And then I realized the band that you're doing, like when you get your health scores back, like this is the good band for cholesterol, above this is bad, below this is bad. You just want a really tight band of alerting and interrupts, because anything else is bad. And so I don't care that the product is actually finding that the thing I'm doing on my shopping list is harmful for my company, which it could have found something really weird. But if that's one of 97 alerts this hour, that product is terrible. It's going to be ignored, and that's a flaw in the product.
Zach, your input on this?
Yeah, 100% on that. If your team can only handle 50 alerts in a day and you're getting 5,000 alerts, then there's no real value there. You're missing way too much. There's too much noise. So in the instance of the goblins AI creation, I would say we probably need to take that thing down for a little bit and do a little retuning and figure out what's going on and where all the noise is, and try to get a little bit more signal in there so we can focus on the real work, find the real threats, and keep the company moving along. So let's take it down and tweak it.
Okay. All right. Good job on that. All right. Next scenario. The Flintstones defense. The operations officer says productivity is not where it should be and points to very dated company hardware many teams work with, often pushing them to rely on their own devices, apps, and AI. Now, Questionable Ideas has more than just a shadow IT problem. The place is completely haunted, so to speak. The kobolds say maintaining core databases and old hardware that runs on the GNOME operating system is the only way to stop cyber attacks that they say are geared for more modern systems. And they believe that they're future-proofing against quantum by looking backward, even to the point of pen and paper if need be. The security team reports that while the core databases have been secure so far, resources operating on these shadow IT devices have been compromised. Do you stick with the kobolds plan, modify it, or completely overhaul it? Zach, why don't you lead us off with your perspective?
I mean, I don't like the idea of what the Cobalt's got going on here. I mean, that's probably not how I would handle it. I would want to. So if we are having a lot of outdated hardware, servers, service switches, whatever it may be, I'd be looking at doing some digital transformation, some modernization there. Yes, we might be more susceptible to new things and quantum and whatever have you, but also we're running on legacy stuff that probably doesn't have support or replacement parts or anything like that. So I don't like the idea of not being able to have service from a manufacturer or a provider. So I'm going to say let's refresh that equipment. Let's get some modern stuff in there, or even host it up in the cloud. Let's get our database on a modern operating system and a modern version of whatever the database should be. Let's make sure there's security controls built in early with encryption in place and proper identity controls. And if we're doing BYOD for the end users, let's have another layer there. So we could do that a couple different ways. I like a lot of enterprise browsers right now. I think there's some good options there, especially if we're touching a lot of cloud systems. We could deploy that out and force traffic through there to secure things down, or we're going to have to start managing devices, and I don't think anyone wants that. So if we're throwing a lot of money at building new systems, we might not have money for end user devices. So we could pivot with a enterprise browser or something like that. We have a few options, but the Cobalt's plan, not a good plan. Let's scrap that and do new.
Brian, your thoughts before the Cobalt's decided to get to chalk and slate?
Yeah, of course. When you said Flintstones, I had no idea where you were going with this. So this is very exciting. Thank you for giving me more time to think and to listen to Zach, because I agree. Supporting these outdated things, right? You have some really old people pin versions of software, way back, or they have really outdated things that just aren't supported anymore. So you can't do that forever. That's not a good solution. So it's the whole idea is terrible, because the bring your own device movement will win. iPhones went in and destroyed the sort of the BlackBerry market, right, inside companies, even though BlackBerry was better for, you could remotely wipe your email and it was all secure and it was all, the right thing. But you even watch the different presidents. I mean, it's not just one, it's like Obama, Trump, all of them. One had to have his BlackBerry and didn't care about the rules. The next one has to have his iPhone, didn't care about the rules, right? And if that's the biggest leader in the country, saying I don't care about the security rules, I'm going to take the device that I want to my job because I can't do my job without it, then what are the rest of us supposed to say, right? And I have a friend who went and worked at a really big company. He's the largest product role there. And when he went in, they gave him a laptop. And this is in 2026, a big company you've heard of. And when he goes to visit a website, it says, oh, that one hasn't been approved yet. Please file a ticket. Maybe it's Yahoo. Maybe it's Reddit. Who knows what it is? Maybe it's, Stack Exchange. Goes to visit the site and it says, I'm sorry, that's not approved. GitHub is approved. These other things are approved. And he's like, I have to file a ticket. So he went to his boss, the CEO of the company. His boss said, buy a second laptop, expense it. Don't install any of our software on it, and just do your job. Get the M5 chip, install local models, do AI. We brought you here to innovate. So keep the work laptop over there, sign in every now and then so they think you're using it, but go and get your, $5,000 tricked out laptop and then do your job. So I don't know how the shadow thing is going to win. So you might as well make the shadow thing the sanctioned way of doing things and make that the primary way and just get them all on board. But I can't ask you if I can open a website and wait 3 hours to find out if I can go to the URL. That's just ridiculous. 2026, come on.
Gotcha. All right, good job on that. All right, on the last scenario, scattershot security. The CEO of Questionable Ideas is afraid the company will not be able to afford quantum-powered cyber defenses if and when that actually becomes a tangible need. Once bad actors get their hands on that kind of tech, the CEO believes it'll be game over for the company. The Gremlins claim they can protect the company by going all in on AI for threat detection and by fragmenting and shifting core data around so it never resides in one location and will be incomplete even if bad actors capture some of it. This will require additional authentication for even simple tasks and requests and may slow down production to a certain extent. And also the Gremlins have installed in hardware that is potentially going to be compromised the ability for explosive self-destruct to protect the company. So yeah, the hardware will implode. Do you keep this strategy, modify it, or scrap it and start over? Brian, why don't you lead us off?
Yeah, again, it's like the Jurassic Park thing, life finds a way. The shadow IT is going to find a way. This is not going to survive. This idea, you said, it may slow down production to a certain extent, right? To zero, right? So that's terrible. When you take all this data, even if you say you have to have different keys to open it and like piece it all together, somebody's going to build an MCP server that looks into all of them, so they can just ask one piece of software to do the job, right? That's what they're going to do. So they're going to find ways around this. There's no way that you can. It's just fire this vendor is my answer. So if they brought me in, I would say fire whoever had this idea and do a better idea.
Zach, your thoughts, and also inclusive of the fact that the hardware could be self-activated, self-destruct if there's a compromise.
I mean, I love it. So self-destructing hardware like Mission Impossible glasses, like, oh man, yeah, that's where it's at right there. Just blow it up. But no, seriously, if security is impacting production, impacting the work of people, that's not going to work. They're going to find a way around it. You can't interrupt the business. You got to be smart about security. And these goblins and gremlins and cobots are all doing it all backwards. So we need to, bring in sure, you can bring in AI. It'll help and maybe streamline some stuff. But I think all this key switching, the data moving around is going to probably cause problems for us if we have to do a recovery internally. If we have an outage that's not security related, incident related, it seems like it's going to make things more difficult for recovery and getting things going again. That's a problem. It's a problem for our end users. So this is a bad strategy. We're not going to go forward with it. Kick them out.
Good job. And also hopefully calling in the bomb squad to make sure that the yield on those self-destructing devices, will not take out a neighborhood. Okay, well, listen, Brian, Zach, I appreciate you navigating questionable ideas and being on the show today. Thank you so much for your insights and input. Appreciate it.
Thank you, JP. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you, JP and Zach.